Hi, this is Shadi, and today I'm gonna discuss and break down the structural systems of Judo and Jujutsu and how they differ. If you look at the Jujutsu techniques or the Jujutsu books that I've linked in the past, you see Dayashi Harai, Sasai, Hizaguruma, Jujigatame, Hanegoshi, very much like Judo, but here you ask yourself, okay, so what's the difference then? And it is very much different when it comes to the structure. I know there's this, first of all, there's this myth that Jiu-Jitsu is like eye gouging and biting and dangerous techniques, and Judo took away all of that and refined the techniques. That's, first of all, that's not true. We'll discuss it later. And also there is this intellectual aspect to Judo with education, morality that was later added on in order to shoot Judo up into the mainstream and make it far more desirable in order to keep it alive. So I'm gonna discuss a few aspects when it comes to the structure in order to understand the differences between the two. So the first one being the ranking. So a brief history on the ranking system of Judo. So in 1883, Jigoro Kano wanted to have a new progressive ranking system. So the first one being Dan. So in Jiu-Jitsu it is just Dan. The more you practice, the more dans you are awarded. It is not as important or prevalent as in Judo or say BJJ like today. So it is, you can be a Shodan but like a monster, and you can be a fifth Dan but you're just very average. It is not as important. It is very different. It is not like related to federations and exams and prerequisites like today. But in Judo, first it was like Dan grade or nothing, and then it became Q and Dan. Q is very prevalent in Japanese culture and Chinese culture. For example, there are Qs for logical board games, and then it was later on added to Judo, and then later on the Q system was divided into 6 parts from Rokyo to Ikkyo. And then later on, when it moved to Europe, it got colored belts to differentiate the Qs. Some say it was Mikunsuke Kaweshi. However, some evidence suggests that even back in the early 1920s in Budokwai, London, people were already starting to use colored belts. So that's, first of all, that's the difference between the two. You have the Q system and now the whole federations thing, and making it like a very well clear system in like a federation and sports, etc. However, I have my issues with this. For example, you cannot do this exam or you cannot get this rank if you don't have this before and that exam or that certificate or how this many seminars. It kind of feels like you're going to school and picking up your credits and looking up the prerequisites in order to see whether you can choose this course or not. It kind of feels like this. It's very much academic rather than going in, showing who you are all about, your consistency, your technique, your development. For example, you have people who are very much talented and learn very quickly, but they are stuck in colored belts simply because of this quote-unquote bureaucracy, while in old Jiu-Jitsu, if you show who you are and you do a great job, you are given Dan after Dan after Dan. Again, it differs from school to school, but that's how they handled it. But making it into this academic system, it kind of pushes the talented people a little bit back and holds them back, in my opinion. So I believe that it should be Q and Dan, kind of like Aikido. You wear your white belt up until you're a black belt. That's the best way to put it, in my opinion. Have some exams, yes, but I don't know about all the other federations, but the French Federation in particular has so many prerequisites. It's ridiculous. And then once you get your black belt, doesn't mean that you're good. Even black belts, before that they were all wearing white belts. Later on, the downgrade became a black belt. For example, here you saw the demonstration of Tobari and Taro Miyake. They were both wearing white belts. So the differentiation was just by scrolls. You get your scrolls, your certificates, but physically there wasn't any. Later on it became white and black, and then later on it became colored and black. Black and white, in my opinion, is the best thing to do. and not make it too much bureaucratic. That will just ruin the art, in my opinion. It's not about, you know, what can you do and what can you provide, but rather how good you are and how consistent you are. The second thing I want to discuss is the Koryu and Gendai. Now, you've probably heard me say this a lot, this Koryu, Ryuha, etc. So to differentiate between the two, Koryu is all the schools that were pre-Meiji era or the 1860s. Gendai is post-Meiji era or the 1860s. So let's talk about the Koryus first. First of all, they are not equal, they are not the same. Why? For example, in the Edo period, 1600 up until the 1860s, until the cabinet of Meiji came into power, Japan was at peace. There was no civil war. It was all united under the Tokugawa shogunate, and people focused more on grappling and more on open hand in order to have randori and also safe competitions with rules and also respect. So all the stuff like eye gouging, biting, even from back then, it was all out. It wasn't judo that came and took them out, so that's false. Randori was very prevalent in Edo period. So you have Koryus from before that, when Japan was in turmoil, there was war, and it was far more heavily weapon based rather than open hand. For example, Nitten Ichiryu, you have the staff, you have the sword, you have the long sword, short sword, two swords, and also open hand to defend against weapons, because Miyamoto Musashi came from a time that knew a little bit of turmoil. He grew up into the Edo period, so he knew a little bit of conflict and had these duels, etc. So his school was far more based on weapons. For example, today you see a lot of schools based on weapons, but just for, quote unquote luxury, or to learn some Buddhist concept, not to fight initially. For example, there are some kata in judo that are weapon based, like Goshin Jutsu no kata, Kime no kata, and they are very rarely practiced, not like other Koryu in the past. So unless you're some red and white belt, middle aged, you're not practicing weapons. Very rarely people are practicing weapons in judo. So it really shows and reflects the times that, but other Koryus, they are just, all they do is weapons, a little bit of open hand, but a lot of weapons, because they reflect the time that they were created in, the turmoil, the inner wars, the civil wars between the Japanese clans and the warlords between themselves. So not all Koryus are the same. You really have to see which time period they come from. Now, Gendai, same thing. They are all not the same. A lot of them had to expand and adapt to the new system in order to just not disappear. For example, they started wearing black belts and white belts to differentiate Dan and no Dan. You see Sadakazu in the beginning, he was wearing a black belt while his uke was wearing a white belt. Also, a lot of them adopted the colored system. For example, you still see Japanese Jujutsu on brochures of clubs, but they wear colored belts, which is something that came along with judo. So this Gendai adapted to modern times and modern systems in order to create a comprehensive system, in order to have students. So not all Gendais are the same, and not all Koryus are the same. And to differentiate between Koryu and Gendai, it simply reflects the periods. Even Koryus reflect different periods. One, if it's more heavily based on weapons, it means that it was before the Edo period. And if it's more of grappling, like Uenishi, Taro Miyake, Yukyotani, etc., you can know that it is either during Edo period or the Meiji Restoration. And this is mainly the difference between the two. Now, when it comes to judo and compared to Koryu and Gendai, now we have simply dojo and we go in. But before that, Koryu and Gendai reflects a lot of things. It reflects heritage, it reflects family, it reflects a long line of sons inheriting it from their fathers. For example, Nitten Ichiryu, at first Miyamoto Musashi wanted to give it to his best student, but his best student felt that he could not do it, so he gave it to Miyamoto's adopted son, because that's how the succession goes. But the adopted son did not accept it because he was not chosen specifically. And later on, Gendai, I'm not sure about recent or about now what's going on, but that's how Koryus worked. To say Koryu or Ryuha, it's something very precious. It reflects a long line of warriors, families, sons after sons, generation after generation. Now it became dojo. You still have the etiquette, you still have the respect, you still have you know, how to conduct yourself, etc. But then it became clubs, brochures, a business, and it really takes away from the importance of what a school is, in my opinion, which is really sad. And then fast forward to BJJ, and they completely screwed this up, and they call it a gym. I seriously, what's wrong with call it dojo? Let's keep it what it is. There's the respect, there is the courtesy, there is the you know, etiquette between you and your partners. When you're rolling, you have a responsibility towards him or her, and vice versa. It is not a gym, it is not a weightlifting room, it is not for gym bros to come in and slam weights. Don't call it a gym if you do BJJ. Please keep calling it dojo. Bow down when you enter the mat, bow down before your partner. You can slap and bump, it's fine, but when you go in on the mat, please bow down, show respect for all the generations before you that worked on these systems, work on these techniques in order to provide you with this great system that is completely functional and great. Do not call it gym, I beg you. Calling it gym is, in my opinion, disrespectful, and it takes away a lot from all these masters, Brazilians, Japanese, whoever they are. It took away a lot of the respect from them when you call it a gym. Call it dojo, keep the etiquette alive, show respect to the mat, to the photo of whoever it is hung, you know, not just go in, say hello to your friends, call your teacher sensei, he is your teacher. I know that, you know, in Brazil or the Brazilian culture, there's not much love for authority, but it's not authority as in authority. It is, you know, he is teaching you, your teacher is, he or her is teaching you, respect them, show them the respect that they deserve. They know a lot better than you, and they are willing to give this to you. So bow down before you enter. Don't call it gym, call it dojo, call it school. Also, you know, you have responsibility and courtesy towards your friends, your rolling partners, so keep it this way. It is not a gym culture. Please do not call it gym, I beg you. So this is mainly the main difference between the two, Judo and Japanese Jujutsu. The structure is very much different, schools are very much different. There is no family succession. Dan and Q and ranking holds far more importance in Judo than in Japanese Jujutsu. The fact that they differentiated it with belts, first white and black, and then 6 Qs, and then black belt, and then the Qs itself had colors. It shows that it holds relevance. Now, unfortunately, it became way too bureaucratic, but nonetheless, it is far more important than in Jujutsu. In Jujutsu, it is different. Your teacher gives you, depending on your technique, your performance, your you know, your perseverance. However, a lot of Gendais today adopt this system of colored belts, etc. So it reflects the Judo culture and the progressive Western culture rather than the old Japanese way. It is just simply a way to adapt and not to dissipate into nothingness and be forgotten like a lot of Jujutsu schools. So I'll link everything in the description below for you to read more. I just did this video to conclude all of the elements which I read about. If you have anything else to add, please share it down below. This was Shadi, and as always, thank you for listening.